just briefly mention to you a concern that some of you know I have, and that is about the problems we have with those of us who use animals in research that have done so much, of course, to improve the well-being of both humans and animals as far as health goes. As you know, that has been under attack for some time. And I just want to urge you to tell your story.
Joe Kamiya died peacefully in his sleep on July 3rd, 2021, about a month short of his 96th birthday. Many of you may not know who Joe was. I'm Sonia Ancoli Israel, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Joe, an Asian American, was kept from finishing high school because in 1942, during the early part of the U.S.-Japan War, all Californians of Japanese ancestry were forced into one of 10 relocation camps. Joe never missed a chance to tell that story, a story that helped shape who he became. He finally was able to graduate with a PhD in psychology in 1954 from UC Berkeley. His first position was as an instructor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Chicago, where his office was across the hall from that of Dr. Nathaniel Kleitman. Dr. Kleitman was just retiring, and he allowed Joe to use his lab for his own research. Dr. Bill Dement, then a medical student, taught Joe about the EEG and sleep staging. Joe's first publication was a chapter on behavioral, subjective, and physiological aspects of drowsiness and sleep. A few years later, Joe moved to UC San Francisco, where he stayed until his retirement in 1992. That's where he became the father of biofeedback, starting a whole new clinical and research discipline. Soon after arriving in San Francisco, sleep researchers from all over came together to form an organization with Joe as the secretary-treasurer. There were no other officers, so essentially Joe was the equivalent of the first president of the Sleep Society, which later became the Association for the Psychophysiological Study of Sleep, the first APSS, and then became the Sleep Research Society. I met Joe in 1974 when he invited me to become his graduate student at Langley Porter at UCSF. Joe was a quiet, kind, and brilliant man. He taught me much about research and about being kind to the people we work with. He encouraged me to expand my knowledge within psychophysiology, but to find a niche, which for me became sleep. So Joe and I came full circle, he starting in sleep and me ending in sleep. He will sorely be missed by all of us who knew him and by all who have been influenced, whether as researchers, clinicians, or patients, by his seminal work. The field is lessened with his passing.
Allan Rechtschaffen this year marks the end of an era for many of us in the sleep field. Clinicians are most familiar with him as an author of the Rechtschaffen and Kale's sleep scoring criteria, which was both a clinical and research standard in the field for almost 40 years. Al, as he was known to everyone, spent his entire academic career at the University of Chicago, where he joined Nathaniel Kleitman in 1957 after receiving his PhD in clinical psychology from Northwestern University. Kleitman, of course, had recently discovered REM sleep, and Al spent the rest of his career focused on answering fundamental questions about sleep. Al's scientific contributions are far too numerous for me to recount here, but I think it is fair to say that no one has made as wide-ranging contributions to our field. He was the first to study individuals with sleep disorders in the sleep laboratory. And with William Dement, he discovered that narcolepsy was a disorder of dissociated REM sleep. but he went on to show that hallucinations in psychotic patients were not. He described the differences in mentation in sleep versus waking and in REM versus non-REM sleep, pointing out the single-mindedness of dreaming. He studied sleep across a wide range of species, and especially in rats, in the quest that drove him throughout his career, which was to discover the function of sleep. Using an elegantly controlled paradigm, the disc over water apparatus, he made the seminal discovery, published in Science in 1983, that a rat deprived of sleep could not survive. Al went on to publish numerous papers on the physiologic effects of sleep deprivation, demonstrating, amongst other things, that sleep is essential for thermoregulation in mammals. While I think he was disappointed in not being able to find the answer himself regarding the ultimate function of sleep, his work set the stage for many other scientists who followed. Perhaps his most famous quotation is, "If sleep does not serve an absolutely vital function, then it is the biggest mistake the evolutionary process has ever made." Al was instrumental in establishing this meeting where we are today. In 1961, he and William Dement started the first APSS meeting, the Association for the Psychophysiologic Study of Sleep, which later became the APSS meeting, the Associated Professional Sleep Societies, and now is simply SLEEP. He received the Kleitman Award from the AASM in 1985 and the Distinguished Scientist Award from the SRS in 1989. I first met Al in 1983 when I was a resident in psychiatry looking for a research mentor. I had the great good fortune to spend the next 10 years working with him in the sleep laboratory on Drexel Avenue, where the upper floors of 2 old apartment buildings had been converted into a research laboratory, where the graduate students each had their own bedrooms so that they could remain with their ongoing experiments 24/7. I'm sure that lab would never pass ALAC standards these days. I spent innumerable hours sitting in the chair next to Al's desk, drinking the instant coffee he'd always make for me, and getting mentored not only in science, but in life in general. Al was without question one of the most rigorous thinkers in our field, with impeccable scientific integrity. He knew how to ask the important questions and how to design meticulous experiments to address them without preconceived ideas about the answers. He used to say over and over, "The data are the data." At conferences, he was both feared and revered. On the one hand, he was never shy about critiquing a presentation, which made for some very interesting oral sessions. And on the other hand, nothing felt better than receiving his approbation of your work. Certainly, Al was tough, and he held us all to high standards, but he was also incredibly kind, generous, and loyal as a scientist and as a person, and lots of fun to be around. To trainees, he was a rock star, and they would flock around him at meetings. He was a great mentor and friend to so many in our field, and he has many scientific children who have themselves made contributions to sleep medicine and sleep and circadian research. As a psychiatrist, I would say that for many of us who worked with him, Al has become introjected into our scientific psyches. Certainly, his voice is constantly in my ear as I try to do my best to mentor students and faculty and find myself repeating the things he said to me. Nice people are people who do their work. Don't get caught up in the soap operas. That which gets in the way of the work is the work, which he said he paraphrased from Marcus Aurelius. And of course, the data are the data. Our field would not have been the same without him.
I've hesitated to accept giving the keynote address because after all these years of studying the function of sleep, in the keynote address, I should tell you the function of sleep, and I can't. I mean, don't sit there waiting to hear what the function of sleep is. If that's what you want, go out and have some more coffee. So what I can give you is the story of some of our wanderings through the question.